I've been working on the soprano saxophone for 40 years, and the possibilities are astounding. It's up to you, the only limit is the imagination. I have the vanity to think that every play I have written is different from the previous ones. Yet, even though they are written in a different way, they all deal with the same themes, the same preoccupations. Exit the King is also the bald soprano. I was a boy soprano. I had a natural kind of voice and then trained it after my voice changed. A soprano's voice is a little like a mother's cry, which is why it attracts all human beings. I love to sing. I'm a soprano. A normal conversation between my uncles about whether or not the lamb is done will come across as a shouting match between four guys all doing their best to impersonate Tony Soprano. I heard Sidney Bechet play a Duke Ellington piece and fell in love with the soprano saxophone. The soprano has all those other instruments in it. It's got the soprano song voice, flute, violin, clarinet, and tenor elements, and can even approach the baritone in intensity. Being lectured by the president on fiscal responsibility is a little bit like Tony Soprano talking to me about law and order in this country. You got to play the flute as a flute, like that. You can't play like a tenor concept on soprano, it sounds wrong. But some guys do it, and they think it's okay, but not so. Nobody inspired me more than Julie Andrews, who is a classically trained soprano herself. The soprano turned out to sound to me like the right hand on the piano. The saxophone is an imperfect instrument, especially the tenor and soprano, as far as intonation goes. The challenge is to sing on an imperfect instrument that is outside of your body. Shortly after this I was made a member of the boys' choir, it being found that I possessed a clear, strong soprano voice. I enjoyed the singing very much. I had 4 or 5 years in school training as a soprano. I fell into pop singing because of economics. I got out of high school and had to go work, and they weren't hiring opera singers. I'm not talking Nicholas Sparks romance. I think women's roles have gotten ghettoized in these sort of places. I'm thinking women in action, comic books, or like the Tony Soprano of women. We need some complex roles. I wasn't the best in my class at the Royal Academy. There was a really good soprano and baritone who were technically better and are doing really well in opera now. But I was definitely the best mezzo-soprano in my class, because I was the only one of those. The cello is a hero because of its register, its tenor voice. It is a masculine instrument, whereas the violin is feminine because of its soprano pitch. When the cello enters in the Dvorak concerto, it is like a great orator. My high school a cappella teacher would embarrass me in front of the choir. "Mavis, you're in the basement. Mavis, you're singing with the boys." I said, "Mr. Finch, my voice isn't soprano. I can't sing up there with the girls." So I just got out of the choir. As a soprano who sings Lucia di Lammermoor, I have the high notes and the trills. No problems there. But going into the low registers is lots of work. My mother had a great voice. Not like mine, not like my sister's, not like my son's, a high soprano voice, but like a bird. I mean, really beautiful. I remember at the age of, and I'll say this, 10 and a half, 11, I had a natural boy soprano. As a boy soprano in the high school choir, I later sang a solo during the carol service at Canterbury Cathedral, but I was too young to secure the Freddie Ansford Hill role in our production of My Fair Lady, and far too timid to have thought to audition for it. Directors didn't know what to do with me in college. I didn't really sound like a belter. I didn't look like a soprano. But in New York, I was in the right place at the right time, where my unusualness fit the bill. I certainly know all about the Jersey jokes that amuse the rest of the country. You've probably heard them. Our state bird is the mosquito. Our state tree is dead. It doesn't help that we are represented on television by Tony Soprano and Jersey Shore. I can hit baritone notes, and I can sing in the soprano range if I wanted to. I did this thing a long time ago where I did a duet with myself. I sound like two different people. The year was 1882. The palace was the Luxembourg Palace, the ball, the Senat Ball, held at the beginning of autumn. It was still warm, and so the garden was used as well. I was the soprano. I was Liliet Byrne. Liliet Byrne, La Generale, newly returned to Paris after a year spent away, the falcon soprano whose voice was so delicate it was rumored she endangered it even by speaking. Her silence is as famous as her performances. I had been in a professional boys' choir, and as a boy soprano, you're aware that your voice has an expiration date. I loved being a soprano. It was one of my very favorite things in life, and thus far, and losing that voice was a profound emotional moment for me in my life. I never became that interested in my adult male singing voice. You have anti-heroes in dramas, like Tony Soprano. But it's a little bit harder in comedy. You don't see it quite as much. You have anti-heroes in dramas, like Tony Soprano. But it's a little bit harder in comedy. You don't see it quite as much.